Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. I'm your host, Pete Pardo, and in the co-captain's chair today, Mr. Ryan Skow.
How you doing?
Ryan's been a regular on our Monday Night Wars Hudson Valley Squares show. So Ryan and I were talking, and I mentioned to him that I'm very interested in doing a ranking the studio albums of new wave of British heavy metal legend Satan, and I figured Ryan was probably the guy to join me on the show, and I was absolutely
Glad to be here.
correct. Yeah. So first of all, before we get started, for those of you watching who really have no idea who this band is, please don't be turned off by the name of the band. I think, these guys maybe wasn't the best choice of a band name, right?
Mm-hmm. They changed it a couple times over the years and changed it back. Changed
it. Exactly. So just because they're called Satan, this is not some, really horrendous, evil, satanic music. These guys are a classic new wave of British heavy metal band. They've got all the attributes that you love from that movement, right? The dueling guitar solos, great guitar solos, lots of speedy riffs. Yeah, I mean, some of the best guitar playing of any of these bands from that era, I think.
I agree. Yeah, right up there with, I'm not going to say right up there with Maiden, but
not far.
Close, yeah, not far behind with the leads and a lot of, all the riffs. Yeah,
yep.
They're right up on that point.
Lots of speed metal going on here, some thrashy, rhythms and riffs and things like that. Some complex proggy arrangements at times. You get the high-pitched vocals, just a really, really good band. Memorable songs, just nonstop riffing. I love them. I think they're great, and it's one of those bands I think that when people talk about the new wave of British heavy metal movement, these guys kind of get overshadowed a bit by the Maidens and the Saxons and the Angel Witches and all the usual suspects. And but I think, man, and a band that has come back roaring to life and releasing arguably the best stuff of their career, right? I mean, and we're going to get to that. So we decided today just to do the 5 albums listed as Satan. They've got a couple albums where they changed their name, changed some members and all that kind of stuff. So we decided just to do the actual Satan proper albums today. So we got 5 of them. So we're going to start at number 5. We're going to work our way back to number 1, and I'm going to have Ryan kick us off with his number 5.
All right. So let's say first of all the old bands from throughout the years that have come back and done reunions, I'm going to put this on record. I think they are the best band. I know Maiden came back in 2000 with Bruce and Adrian. And there's been tons of reunions over the year. Like Sirith Ungol came back either this year or last with a really good album. But Satan to me they put out 3 albums since reuniting with their original lineup. And it's actually the cool thing. On all 3 of these reunion albums, it's the same 5 guys that were on the debut album, which is rare. Sometimes reunions with the maybe you start with all 5 guys, you end up with one, kind of whittles down as people lose interest or life changes or whatever. These guys have maintained that lineup for the entire time. So this is the second of their reunion albums. Let me just get the years right here. So this is from, this is from 2015. And this is Atom by Atom, which is, they still have the kind of the classic cover art that they employed back there on Court in the Act, which all their newer stuff does. And it was hard to rank these, Pete said, because all these new albums are great. So I kind of was like almost throwing darts to the board. And I'm going to say this is probably my least listened to of their reunion albums, but it's still really good. So that's where I went with number 5.
There you go. So my number 5 is going to be their second album from 1987, Suspended Sentence. So this is not with that all original lineup. So here you got Michael Jackson on vocals, who takes over for Brian Ross. Michael Jackson, not that Michael Jackson. And their vocals couldn't be any different. You got Brian Ross, who's got that real kind of high pitched thing going on, whereas Michael Jackson is more of kind of like a gruff,
lower,
way lower register, right? That being said, some pretty good songs on this album. You got Who Dies Wins, really good thrashy song. Suicidal Justice sounds as close to like early thrash, early Exodus as you can possibly get. Vandal chugs along, really good song. I think production of the album is a little on the murky side, but that was kind of like the time, right? I don't find the songs on this album as overall as compelling as the debut or even some of the later stuff. I'm not crazy about his vocals. It's like, you know what? Sometimes there's something to be said about a guy who just sounds like who is the vocalist for a band. And for me, it's hard to take anything with this band other than Brian Ross at the helm. So Michael Jackson might be good on any other album. With these guys, I don't feel this one as much. So for me, it's easily my least favorite, although some very good stuff on there, though.
All right, so my number 4 going down is also Suspended Sentence for a lot of the same reasons. I was just looking away here and checking. They did put out another album in the interim because Suspended Sentence was 87. They changed their name to Blind Fury. They put out a good album, which you can look up if you want, and that has Brian Ross. And now they came back with Michael Jackson on vocals, and I felt a lot of the same thing. It's a pretty good for a new wave band, kind of getting into the late 80s when a lot of those bands kind of started to drop off, or some of them I thought changed their sound for the better, like Cloven Hoof. I like their stuff, but Satan's album, it was better than most, but it was still kind of like it wasn't as good as the first album or some of the other stuff too. But my opinion mirrors a lot of your thoughts on that too. It's the vocals I don't really identify with Satan as much. One of those guys where if he sang for another band, it's fine. And I'm not actually familiar with anything else he did, so I can't really comment on that. But on that one album, it's fine, but it doesn't really sound too much like a Satan album for me. And the vocals have a lot to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. All right, from here on in, for me, this is just almost impossible to rank because I think all of these other albums are just such high quality and so good. So yeah, like you, it's just kind of like threw the dart at the board. But I went and re-listened to all these again, and I'm like, all right, I think I have some sort of a kind of ranking here, but I love all these. So I'm gonna go with their last album, Cruel Magic, 2018.
Good choice.
Great album, right? I mean, it's just this album was more kind of live in the studio, so a little bit different, less, I think, meticulous as far as the production goes than the two prior to it, but no less kind of kick-ass, right? Title track, catchy, heavy. You got Doomsday Clock has some great guitar work. Man, this album might even have the best guitar work out of any of the albums. I mean, the leads are just smoking.
It's up there.
Right? I mean, it's
Is it
just...
Russ Tippins and Graham Taylor, I think?
I
misquoting
forget what their names are here. I know I got
Steve Ramsey.
That's it, Ramsey and Tippins. Yep. I mean, they make a great duo. Both guys can shred. The riffs are just fantastic. Death Knell for a King, killer song. Who Among Us, Ghost of Menorah, kind of proggy but really heavy. It's just a great album, and it was one of my favorites of 2018. Just goes to show you how much I love probably the other albums we're going to talk about, because the fact that this is ranking number 4, and it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. So go close up of the cover, and there's the guys in the band right there. So Cruel Magic 2018, my number 4. Back to you.
All right, so my next one for number 3 for me is same album for a lot of the same reasons, Cruel Magic. And one of the I was a little I don't want to say hesitant, but I guess I get a little cynical when some bands come around, they do a reunion. It's a really good album sometimes, and then they keep going like, all right, we got some wind in our sails. People are coming to our shows. Things are selling well. We're going to keep going. And they'll put out album after album, which is fine, But after a while, it's like you kind of see, all right, the last album kind of sounded like that. Like, I'll give you a good example. Not to go off tier here, but death metal band Autopsy. First reunion album, great. Then after a while, I'm like, it kind of sounds like the one before that. But these guys, third reunion album in a row, like, this is amazing. I thought it was a little slower than the previous two.
Yeah.
Be a little more melodic. Like you said, the production was a little raw, a little more in the studio, but it was perfect. Like, I've listened to this one probably just as much as the first reunion album, which I'll get to in a little bit. But, this has been sitting in my stereo now for about 2 years with, on a pretty regular basis. All of them have, but this one really has been a regular visitor, and it's, again, the same 5 guys this whole time, which is rare. And the same, awesome guitar playing, great leads, great solos. There was a couple other good, what else we got on this album here too? Wrong one. I forgot where I put it, but it's just an awesome album. Really, really good. And I'm,
what's interesting too, to go back to your point that you mentioned about a minute ago. So here we're 3 albums into their comeback, and now they're on Metal Blade. So you would figure they would put out this much more polished type of release that maybe kind of, draws from a lot of the same elements from the previous 2 albums. But no, they get signed to a big metal label. They go out and do an album that's actually rawer than the 2 that came before, and just they just went in a different direction, which I think is pretty cool. And give them credit for doing that, right?
I think actually I just realized I held up the wrong album. I held up my next pick,
Oh, did you? I didn't even notice. I was too busy listening to you, Ryan.
Okay. I don't know what the hell happened here. I got my dog discombobulated me. So I'm gonna yeah, that's my number 2. Magic. Awesome album.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so my number 3. Again, I could change this order at any time. I'm going to go with Life Sentence from 2013. It's awesome. I mean, and I remember you and I spoke at length when this album came out. We were like, holy crap, to come out with a new record all these years later that's as good as this. I mean, this was like a comeback for the ages, right?
It's unbelievable. It's probably the best, I'm going to say the best reunion album in metal. Like that one album, if I had to put one above all others, years later, come and just to knock it out of the park like that, from first song, every song. I can't think of anything that's quite as good as that one.
Yeah, it's like, let's go get all the old guys back together and let's try it again. And man, it's fantastic. Love the artwork. I mean, the whole album the CD looks great. Time to Die, killer. Siege Mentality. You got those kind of weaving lead guitars of Testimony. You got the title track, which is full on speed metal. You got Personal Demons, which is just raging kick-ass tune.
Cenotaph, great song. Holy
exactly, crap. Right? Just, man, top to bottom, 10. And you know what's great about these albums too? 10 songs. I mean, it's just like, it does not, none of them overstay their welcome. They didn't come back and say, all right, we're going to give you a 65, 70 minute long album, right? 10 tracks. It's, under an hour, just kicks your ass, gets out of Dodge, exactly what you want, right? Love it. Yeah, these are all great albums, All right.
So my number 2, also, I kind of felt like we might end up going the same direction on these choices. And so my number, it's coming back again, Life Sentence. And a lot of the same reasons. And one of the cool things about this band, just go off a little tangent here, and I watched your special with Martin on New Wave of British Heavy Metal. I love how, like, when New Wave of British Heavy Metal was coming up in the end of the 70s, it was kind of about the same period of time that metal as a whole was kind of starting to pull away from rock. So you had bands, albums, songs that were still very 70s rock sounding, had that groove, that, that bluesy 70s rock feel, which is fine and sounds great. And you also had bands coming around that started to push in a direction where the guitars were a little more like cutting, a little more intense, tempos were a little faster, and it didn't really sound so much like the decade prior so much. So you had, Maiden obviously comes around. The first Maiden album, you can't listen to that and be like, wow, this sounds like any old 70s band. It totally doesn't. It's way faster. The guitars between Adrian and, man, my brain is, it's a little early here. The first, no, not on the first. Oh, no, Dave on the first.
Dennis Stratton.
Yeah, Dennis Stratton and Dave on the first album. That was unbelievable. Phantom of the Opera, stuff like that. And Satan were one of those bands where even early on, they pushed in that newer direction. The songs were way faster. The dual guitars, which you had heard before with Thin Lizzy, Wishbone Ash, a couple of 70s bands had really pushed that. But these bands that were going in a way more aggressive, more intense direction where you hear it and, in hindsight, you're like, this is fucking metal, where some of the a little, a little slower, a little groovier. So the new wave was like a great microcosm of like that whole transition, from the 70s into the 80s. And Satan, I think, were one of the forefront for those bands. And you heard Life Sentence, and it was like one of the rare albums where that whole sound comes flooding back. You hear those really great, melodic dual guitars kind of like rampaging through. Great songs, Brian Ross's great vocals, and like all the songs you just mentioned. I think there's some other ones on every song on this album. It's freaking unbelievable. The title track, 2025, and I don't know if you had a chance to see them live, because once these albums started coming out, they actually toured the stage quite often. They'd come over here like once, maybe twice an album. So I think between Life Sentence and Up at the Core Magic, I was able to see them probably like 5 or 6 times over the course of a couple of years, and every single time they just kicked ass. They were always playing at like smaller, mid-sized venues around Manhattan and Brooklyn, and I think the first time they came back, they played at this really tiny place in Brooklyn called this is one of those bars that changes names a lot. It was called the Black Bear Bar. So
that was before they played at St. Vitus, right? So that was their first appearance, yeah.
Several years before. I'm almost positive this is their first appearance back. It was the Black Bear Bar down in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and they just fucking kicked ass. Like, they came out, and I remember I was there with Steve Keeler, who's a guest on a couple of your other shows, and he was just standing there like someone just hit him in the head with a brick. He's like, Jesus fucking Christ, these guys are so good. Like, I don't know. I know he's obviously around back then, but I don't know if he heard these guys a lot back then because, like you said, they tend to be a little overlooked. So it might have been his first real experience, like really getting hit by their music. And he's just like, you know, his eyes were like saucers. Oh, my God, these guys were great. And Nick, who also is a regular on these shows too, he was the same thing. I brought him to that show, and he's watching like, these guys are amazing. And I'm like, you know, I think one of the reasons why this band has been so good, like in the modern day, is because these guys didn't take 30 years off from music. A lot of them were in the like the folk band Skyclad for quite a few years.
Yeah, that's right.
So they honed their chops and they kept going, you know. So when they came back, it wasn't like they've been, you know, all right, time to get off the couch after all these years. So that's why they were still, I think, so razor sharp. And yeah, even from those first shows, they were just like a freak, you know, very well oiled, very intense. You know, you could tell that it sounded like they hadn't taken a break, you know, in all those decades. It was still freaking amazing. So that is my number 2 choice, was Life Sentence.
Cool. All really good points there, and good. Yeah, definitely. If you get a chance to check out Satan when they come, whenever this COVID thing dies down, be pretty cool. And hopefully we get another album from them, because they've been putting them out every like 2-3 years. So right,
yep.
We got
right.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right. Man, I had a hard time picking my top 2 here. My gut was telling me one thing, my brain was telling me something else, and then I said, you know what, let's not overthink it. So I went with their debut for number 2, Court in the Act. It's an absolute classic, 1983. It's, again, if you love the new wave of British heavy metal stuff and you've never listened to Court in the Act, you absolutely got to listen to it, right? Plenty of speed metal rhythms and those swirling twin guitar things going all over the place. You got the high-pitched vocals, and I got to tell you, Brian Ross sounds exactly the same today as he did back in 1983. That's like what's fascinating to me.
He does,
right? It's just, and I think this is, you know, this is a must for fans of like those early Iron Maiden albums.
It is.
It's like, don't let the name scare you off. I mean, these guys are just, they're right from that era, and the stuff is not far removed. It's just really challenging music. It's heavy, tons of lead guitars, great riffs. It's, you know, early speed metal. You know, you got Trial by Fire, which is just absolutely amazing. It's catchy. Blades of Steel, pure headbanging fun. What else? Broken Treaties. You got Break Free, what's another like supercharged, you know, manic song. And these guys, you know, like Maiden had, especially early on, had a little bit of that kind of punk element kind of coming up through their music. These guys, a little bit of that too, not too much, but a little bit. You got the great instrumental, The Ritual, which I would love to hear them do more instrumental stuff. That's kick ass.
They've got the chops for it. They've got that. Because they throw those breaks in songs, which Maiden did, and which I love. Like, they'll, you know, if it's a 4 or 5 minute song, they'll be like a good 90 seconds sometimes. Like, they just stop with the vocals and just break into these instrumental breaks, which is kind of like, you know, they pick up tempo and stuff. I fucking love it. You know, I love when bands do that. And they're one of the bands that, like, they do it really, really well.
Yeah, they totally pull it off. I mean, Ramsey and Tippins are just, they're an incredible, incredible guitar duo. So, yeah, classic album. This is probably pretty hard to get right now. I know for a while there, this was out of print. I know Metal Mind reissued it, but yeah, well worth checking out if you haven't heard it, haven't gotten it. If you can get it, do it immediately. All right, number 1. All
right, number 1.
I think I know what your number 1 is.
There's only one left. It is little drum roll here. It is.
Oh, he's got the LP. Good.
Court in the Act. All the same reasons. So this did come out in '83. So I guess that could be a reason why they were kind of overlooked, because if they had gotten the debut album out in like 80, 81, you know, they were in that Diamond Head, Angel Witch, you know, Saxon, Maiden, like some of those first bands. I feel like they might have gotten a little more attention.
They're a little towards a little late almost. Yeah, it's still in there, but it's towards the back end. Yeah.
And I wonder almost if the name had any impact. Like, that's just speculating. If the name had any negative impact, because they changed the name to Blind Fury, and then they changed the name to Pariah, and they put out 3 albums on the Pariah, which I'm not too familiar with, that are more like thrashy. But then they changed the name back to Satan again. So I don't know if they've ever had some internal consternation over the name here, but they've been going with Satan now on this whole reunion run. But yeah, this album is I got the patch too. I got to sew this onto something here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, these it's an incredible album. It's got those dual guitars, like you said. The guitars are some of the best, you know, like I said, just below Maiden for me in terms of, you know, phenomenally talented guitarists individually, and the way they work together, like they weave the line, you know, the melodic lines back and forth. It's amazing. You know, I'm going to say overall, you know, Maiden's my favorite band of all time, so I got to put them number one. But other than that, like, this album is probably right below or right tied with the first Angel Witch album for like my favorite new wave of all time. You know, the artwork on the front. There's the artwork on the front is phenomenal. The lyrics. They've actually, the band's got some really good lyrics too, going through all these albums. You know, Brian Ross writes some really good stuff, and it's not just the usual kind of like typical metal stuff, which I love. I love that more, like, you know, it's stuff you draw on the back of like a high school notebook. But this guy puts together some pretty good stuff, and he's done so consistently now for their entire career. And I hope they keep putting out albums, and I hope I get to see them again one day, because of every time I've seen them, it's been a 10 out of 10 performance every time without fail. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So my number one, again, debating over this back and forth. I kind of went with the album that I probably have listened to the most from them, and that's Atom by Atom from 2015. So, you know, for me, this album it's never-ending killer guitar solos, riffs, and fills, man. I mean, these two guys are just, every single song is just ear candy if you're into guitar-oriented music. You got Farewell Evolution, just kicks off the album in just, you know, blazing fashion. Brian Ross is incredible throughout this whole album. You got Fallen Savior, which is a great anthem. You got Ruination, which is really complex and kind of thrashy. Devil's Infantry, pure speed metal. Got the title track, which is really good, really memorable. My Own God is galloping along like, you know, classic Maiden, right? Araman is great. You got The Fall of Persephone, which is kind of like progressive metal that closes the album. Just terrific stuff. Man, I don't know. The guitar work is just off the charts on this album and all these albums. But and I love the fact that, I think we kind of hinted on this, but I love the fact that from album to album, it's very consistent, right? I mean, it's like you got the, you know, they have their mascot, right? This kind of Grim Reaper-ish looking dude. You got the same logo. I mean, it's all very consistent, and it's just, it's like the Satan brand, right? It's like all over it. So, and I like that. I like that.
I do too. And let me throw a real quick shout here. I don't know if you ever heard this band. This is their guitarist Russ Tippin's newer solo act, Tanith.
I have not. I love that album cover.
I'm going to throw this out real quick. This is, if you like, I'm going to say some names you definitely like. Uriah Heep, Wishbone Ash, Little Thin Lizzy. It's a little more, I don't want to say like whimsical, but it's a little lighthearted than Satan. But his guitar playing, it's just as good as anything he does in Satan. It's got a mix of like male, female vocals. So if you like any of those bands, you love Satan's guitar playing. They put out an album. I think it was on Metal Blade. And,
really? Wow.
Yeah, 2019. The album's called In Another Time. So if you love Satan, or you love any of those other bands I just mentioned, especially a lot of the, I think, going to say Wishbone and Thin Lizzy influences, this is highly recommended. That's why I dug this shirt up for this show.
I'm going to have to get that, I think. Yeah, how did that squeak by me? It's on Metal Blade. I'm surprised.
On Metal Blade. Don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure he moved to New York City at some point, even though Satan's an English band.
Right.
I've seen him at a few shows throughout the city, like when, you know, like I'm trying to remember the shows here, but he's definitely shown up. And then I'm like, you know what? He must either live here now, or he's got a really good deal on frequent flyer miles. And then I find out he does this new band, Tanith, and they're based in Brooklyn. So I'm like, all right, I'll check these guys out. They only have one other, like a 2-song demo from a couple of years ago. And then he put out this album, Metal Blade. And as soon as I heard it, I'm actually ashamed at myself I never told you about them, because you would like them a lot. It's like right up your alley. It's got that very 70s-ish kind of sound with those bands, but also the guitar playing is just fucking phenomenal with him on board. And, you know, check them out today. You'll definitely like it.
Send me an email with the title of the CD, and I'll just go and order it. So, yeah.
Okay. You got it.
Sounds good. So you get with Satan, and then an additional band to go check out for everybody. So cool. So there you have it. Ranking the studio albums of Satan. So for you Satan followers, it's kind of weird. For you fans of the band, rank the albums as you like them in the comments below. If you've never listened to this band, please go out and do so. Then come back and report on what you thought. Right. So if any of these albums are worth hearing, they're all great. All great. All great. So visit us on the web at www.catranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Thanks to Ryan Skow for coming on board early this morning at the crack of dawn. So we will see Ryan back again on Monday night for another crazy edition of the Hudson Valley Squares, is what I like to call it. We've got some funny stuff cooking up for you guys. We're going to be talking about some kind of guilty pleasures, right? So stay tuned for that. And
I got some good ones. Can't wait.
I hope so. Yeah. So I think that should be a lot of fun. So we'll see you, Nick and Chris Al, on Monday night. Everybody else, have a great day. Have a great weekend. What's coming up? All sorts of stuff coming up. So stay tuned. We got you guys have asked for some of the best one-album wonders in the history of rock, hard rock, and metal and prog. I've got a stack of stuff that I've been accumulating of bands that released really good single albums. Then that was it, and then they were gone. So stay tuned for that this weekend, and we'll see you all later on. Take care. Ryan, have a good one.
Later.